Hi, I'm Rob. You know me as unwavering, and I make you better. That's what I do. I would like to talk a little about what I've been doing in the golf swing and research and using science. When you see the guy, Hans swings here, a few years back, he had a back problem with the morning golf swing. Couldn't really play. He hurt it too much, right? So I told him to change, and he didn't want to change. So I figured out, I'm going to study this. I can teach him to swing better. And I went to look at various long hitters like Mike Goldstein, long driving and others, right? So what I did was very simple and straightforward, since you use science, right? I observed, I looked at what they were doing, correlated that with evidence. So when I looked at Mike Goldstein, he was swinging one way. Then you had the golf instruction, and you had the golf theory that Mike Goldstein was teaching, that Don Shoger was teaching, that later on Mike Dunaway, Steve Pratt, John Marshall, Jacob Bond were teaching. But it didn't correlate and match what Mike Goldstein was doing in his swing. And I was telling people that at the time, 10 years ago, give or take. And they were telling me that I was wrong. The interesting thing with facts and evidence, it can't be wrong. And it's in astrophysics, for example, people doing study of the universe, looking out there. Sometimes they find an observation, right? They observe something in the universe, and sometimes they find something that's never been documented before. There's no theory, there is no, understanding or conceptual, or math behind it, or logic, and sometimes they do find something that knew existed out there. Or someone is able to explain something like Hawking's radiation, Stephen Hawking did, but a few years back. But that's simple, right? So they make an observation, then they have to do a lot of correlation. They have to check that the instruments is working as they should. They have to triple check everything. They have to verify that it's not being presented before. There's a lot of work that goes through for them to make a documentation. Because one of the things with science is replication. A few years back, someone was presenting evidence of cold fusion, an experiment of cold fusion. So they presented the findings of cold fusion, right? The problem with that cold fusion was it didn't work, like cold extraction, right? It doesn't work. Because no one in the world could replicate that result of cold fusion. So the scientists in the cold fusion made a mistake, right? Maybe they wanted more funding, maybe they, didn't check their numbers, or they altered the numbers so it would fit, right? Either way, it was just, didn't work. So when I look at golf instruction that people been, telling me it works, right? I went to Golf X forums, and they were saying that Monty Shumlin knows what he's talking about when it comes to golf, because he's teaching tubers or something like that. And I checked that, didn't match. It didn't correlate to the evidence I had. And then they would say Jim Waldron or IT's Golf there, and other golf forums like Central Forum. They were telling me, and then you have like people like Sean Fowler, for example, telling people, I think it was 2014, in a Golf Digest magazine, that if you push up with the right foot in the swing, you can get more power. And that doesn't work. And then he was telling me that they do that in baseball, when they're throwing balls and all that stuff. And I checked out, didn't do that. So obviously he didn't misunderstand what you're doing in baseball. The funny thing is, I had actually a college level baseball player come and say they were doing that, and I said, you can't do that, it's not how it works. And I guess that's why he just went to college and not went to the two-pro circuit of baseball. So what I've been doing, make an observation, correlate the evidence, and have the facts. Then I tried to teach, find a way to teach this stuff, and early on what I found was that conceptual approach didn't work. So if someone's teaching, a lift in a takeaway, it's not enough, that's conceptual. If people say that you should do a tripod, swing the bell, swing C7, figure 7, or some other bullshit that Mike also was talking about, doesn't work. And so that's the problem. Because now you're going to have fans or golf instructor who tells you it works when it doesn't. So one of the things I presented as far now with this kind of evidence and correlation, what I've been doing is I don't use the thumb on the shaft. I don't teach that stuff. And I teach a very isolated takeaway sequence also. So people can put themselves in the proper position in the takeaway. They can't teach us that, by the way. Now, last year I made a video for a member because he started to ask me about my grip because I was talking about that, and I made a grip for the member. I didn't make it for Hans. I never told Hans to shift his grip. He looked at the video and he started to test it and experiment, and he asked me a few questions along the way, and he shifted to my grip. At first he felt like it was very basically awful, you know, and he felt like he was dropping his club and all that stuff, but he stuck with it, right? And then he started to hit the ball better. So last week I asked members, to ask him a question if they want about his experience with the grip and all that stuff. And he explained that it felt awful at first. Then when he got used to it, it made him, felt great. And he tried to go back to the modern golf grip with the thumb on the shaft, and he can't. He said he tried. It just makes it more difficult. And science work like this, you have to disprove things. You can't just go with everybody in golf is telling you, well, everybody's teaching the thumb on the shaft, so that must be the way to do it. And I said, no, that's not how it works. That's the worst way you can hold a club. When you put your thumb on the shaft, doesn't matter if you use single axis grip like in natural golf or baseball grip, or when you put your thumb on the shaft, you create a problem. And people don't know that. So once he tried the modern golf grip, go back to it, he couldn't do it because it made him worse. It made it more difficult. So if you're gonna, but people in golf, they don't treat this as science, they treat it as religion, assumptions, faith, beliefs, usually just bullshit, right? And it's very difficult for me to talk to them about this stuff because I use evidence, and they have guesswork, and then they have a religion. And then there are fanatics, right? It's like a bunch of priests, This is what you have to take on faith, how it works. And when you try to correlate it, it doesn't match. And then people say, well, it should work, because we have the faith and belief that it should work. And I'm like, it doesn't work the way they say. Because if it did, you shouldn't struggle. Think about that. So the tester, he spent 5 years and he went to 12 different PGA teachers. They had, hundreds of millions of lessons, probably decades of teaching golf. He went and played, went to shit. He went back with that answer. I can't play with this shit. Doesn't work. Now, would you expect them to do something differently so it would work? Of course. If you use common sense and science, if you do something and it doesn't work, you have to do something differently. But golf instructor doesn't work with that. Golf instructors doesn't work that. They don't change their mind. They will say, well, I've been teaching this for 30 years and I'm going to still teach you the same thing. Well, I'll go play with it. It doesn't work. I'm struggling. And then they give you a bullshit explanation why you struggle, because they don't know. And it starts with the thumb on the shaft. It starts with the left arm straight. It starts with it width in the takeaway, and they all put you in the wrong positions at the top. You can't avoid that. So why would they keep on teaching that? And why would it? Because it's a religion. They can't use common sense. They can't think critically, in another word. So I had the choice then years ago that should I go with the evidence and the observation I did and correlation I've been doing, or should I trust people who's telling me that it works when everybody's struggling with that shit? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? What do you think I did? My takeaway, my grip allows you to hit longer. One amateur who, listening to modern golf teachers, he did my grip and my takeaway for 2 weeks. And he added 35 meters to his pitching weight. He was hitting a pitching weight 90-95 meters, a typical amateur. And now he was able to hit it 130 meters. And this is with only the grip change and my takeaway. Nothing else. I haven't released the rest of the information. Because one of the reasons why I haven't is because I have something called ME, which is an energy deficiency illness. And making a video like this is difficult because I get tired, more like fatigue. I'm already fatigued in the morning. If I take a walk in the morning and it's a breakfast, sometimes I just crash and I have to go sleep on the sofa for a while and rest. Making this video is also difficult. Now, some asshole was coming to my channel and say, oh, this makes me a victim. Well, here's the thing. This affects everything in my life. How fast I can work, how much I can do every day. It's like gravity, right? Gravity is everywhere. You've been interacting with your whole life. When you go ask, those people who work with science in that field, and you ask them, what is gravity? They can't really explain it. They know how it behaves, they know how it functions, but they can't really describe what it is. And one of the things I've been trying in science over the years is trying to find something called to unify various forces in the universe, like gravity, electromagnetism, and such. But they've been unable to unify the one single theory because they can't do it yet. Einstein tried for 40 years or something like that. He couldn't do it. Pretty smart guy, by the way. But he couldn't do it. Now, the same thing is happening in golf. Golf has become a religion of people thinking they know what they're doing and teaching and all this stuff in theory and hearsay, and then you have people distorting facts and information all the time. And usually, conceptual approach, it doesn't work. You have to correlate the evidence, you have to correlate the observation, you have to back check, and then you have to, as I've been doing, find a way to teach that stuff. And then you have people telling me that I have to, work faster. I can't. It takes the time it takes for me. You can't rush science. But you have to, because that's what you do in science, you have to disprove things, right? The cold fusion was disproved because you can't replicate it. What I've been doing here, presenting my grip and the takeaway, is I check people who are members who try that out. They use my grip, they send videos or and I see that they start to move the body properly without any more information. They start to move it properly without being told how to do it. And people can teach us that. So that's one way you can correlate evidence, because people can replicate the swing pattern I want them to have without them being told what it is. That's one way you can replicate things, And science is pretty big on replication. I mean, if let's say you make up something called relativity, and then you describe a black hole, how it should look 120 years ago, like Einstein did, and then when people took a photograph of the black hole 2 years ago, right, it looked like what Einstein said, because when two black holes collide, for example, when two black holes will collide in the universe, they do that sometimes, then they warp space-time. That they warp space. It's kind of, like you're dropping a rock on the water and you get rings on the water and that goes around like that. Basically two black holes when they collide or something like that, big objects, right? They create space ripples in time and space. Then they have a laser going like this, back and forth through two mirrors, right? And they measure how long time that laser takes back and forth, speed of light, right? Then when a ripple pays, when two black holes collide, then a ripple passes through that laser, and then the laser slows down. Now, the cool thing about science, when that happens, it can measure that, then it can pinpoint where in the universe that did happen. Well, 2 billion years ago, in that direction, they can look at it and there is two black holes colliding. 2 billion years ago. Then they can figure out which direction it is. I think it's fucking, magic. But it's not magic, it's science. Just because you don't know how the golf swing works and all this golf theory and instruction shouldn't stop you from listening to proper instruction that, I provide. But I can talk about this a lot, about the takeaway, the thumb on the shaft that everybody teaches is bad. That's bad instruction. Conceptual teaching a lift, conceptual teaching, whatever else, makes it difficult. That's where people struggle. The testers and the members I have that try this out, they don't struggle. They get longer, it becomes easier, and it starts to work. And you don't struggle. The interesting part is that some of them doesn't think about that. may not be aware is that when they start trying it out, it just works. So they start asking for the next piece of information. Well, what about the next thing? Because the first information, my grip and the takeover works, so now they start asking for the next information. But they don't do that. If you go to a modern golf teacher, they can't teach you that. And the tester who spent 5 years in 12 teacher, it doesn't work. After 5 years in 12 teacher, he's like, okay, I had enough. So he went on Google, found me, and asked me if I could help him. I made one session. Told him what to work on. First session he did, he hit the ball better in 3 weeks time. It just worked. With my instruction, what's going to happen is people doesn't need golf lessons anymore. You may still need some help with your course management and other stuff maybe, but once you learn how to have the skill set, because that's what I teach. I teach you to have skills, acquire skills. Other people teach you guesswork, and that doesn't work so well. I teach you to acquire the skills needed, and once you have them, like tying your shoelaces, riding a bike, driving a car, using your smartphone or something like that. Once you have the skills, you can just do it. You don't need to practice it, you can just do it. And hopefully that will come up sometime this year. I don't know, I'm tired, so I'm gonna end it here. Hope you understand a little bit of the background I've been doing. I correlated evidence, correlated the observation there, so I don't need to guess. I have the facts, I have the testing, and whenever everybody else comes and talk about golf, they are built on guesswork and have no idea what they're talking about. So I mean, kind of amazing, really. And this is what they teach pupils, by the way. They teach them wrong. They teach them bad instruction, and what can I say? It is what it is, until it isn't, right?